Started my first startup in '97. The world told me I was insane.
Our goal is creating future economies that are more regenerative and sustainable.
Something didn't match up. Why hasn't this become the next big thing? And that's where we invested.
The whole purpose of achieving anything in life is measurement.
Welcome everyone to the Achieving a Culture of Innovation session led by Greg Sauter, who is the president of WGI. Just as a quick general reminder, unless you are a presenter, please make sure your audio and video are off. So I'm personally very excited. I just told Greg this. I'm personally very excited to hear what he has planned for this session, because I think, as we all know, one of the things you mentioned in your summary for the session, Greg, is like, picking the technology is just half the battle. You have to have people who are willing and able to kind of shift mentally, to come into that mindset, and really, create an entire culture of innovation. And a culture of innovation in a corporate environment is not easy to build. It's actually incredibly challenging. In fact, I would argue personally, from my experience, it's like the corporate environment is the antithesis of what you would typically see in an innovative kind of startup environment that's moving very quickly and failing fast. It's just like, that's the nature of a large company, an established company that has had success, is like, you're kind of in preservation mode, right? So for those who don't know, Greg Sauter is the president of WGI and the founder of Smart City Works, the world's first infrastructure actuator. The firm focuses on accelerating infrastructure innovation and commercialization, bringing to life promising business ideas, and helping companies catalyze and rethink civil infrastructure innovation. The goal, of course, is helping meet the needs of 21st century communities and their growing populations. Greg is also past president and chief executive of Crossroads Advisory, servicing infrastructure and technology companies. He and his team have some advanced leadership capabilities and transformative organizational outcomes. They've achieved those, while focusing primarily on culture, innovation, ethics, integrity, and authentic leadership, which I think is going to be the kind of the crux of what we discussed today. Greg has over 30 years experience in the engineering and construction industry, and is a professional engineer with a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Massachusetts, a Master's of Science degree in civil environmental engineering from the University of Alabama. Oh man, I'm a Gator. That was tough last Saturday.
Oh, what a great game!
That was a great game, though. And a Master of Business Administration degree from Rutgers University. Greg, thrilled to have you again today, and thank you for spending time. I will pass it over to you.
Great, thanks, Nick, and a great introduction. You really hit the nose on the head. In fact, a lot of times we talk about it in corporate entities and bigger organizations. When you talk about innovation, the white blood cells come out and they try to kill it. And it's one of the things that we have to overcome. So thanks very much for that. Thanks to the Shadow Ventures team for putting the summit on. I know how much work goes into it, but it's a fantastic event. So why this topic? And Nick really teed it up well. Corporate culture is a passion of mine and something that I've been working on, with teams my whole career. And I think it's taken on a new urgency as we all move into a time of digital transformation and a changing industry. You hear throughout the sessions, everybody starts their topic by saying, we're so far behind other industries, we're lagging, and we really need to transform. And that's what we're focused on here at WGI, is transforming ourselves as well as helping our clients transform. And what I've come to know is that cultures that we as leaders help create and foster will either support and inspire innovation or outright kill it. And that's why we're here talking about it today. I'm very keen to hear some of your thoughts and questions as well, and what you're doing to create cultures of innovation within your organization. So I'm going to give you a short introduction to WGI. That's kind of the lens that I'm talking from today. Talk about some of the challenges before us, some of the stats around that, what we really mean when we talk about culture, because there's a lot of different points of view on that. Some of the things that we at WGI have done to frame our innovation culture, some examples of how that's played out, and then wrap it up and hopefully have a discussion afterwards. So WGI is a full-service engineering and consulting firm, and instead of the typical commercial about our capabilities, instead I wanted to talk about our professionals. So I thought it'd be helpful to share the diversity of our team and the folks that we work with every day through some pictures and faces. So we have planners, we have architects who spend their days on the boards, we have landscape architects, we have mobility specialists, we have engineering teams that solve problems and design structure. We have scientists, botanists, arborists. We've got folks that are tortoise relocators. We've got folks that are out every day. Those who spend their days evaluating our shorelines, seagrass, mangroves, the health of our reefs. And then we've got folks that are focused on advanced tools and technology. Teams that focus on innovation specifically in the advancement of technology. And then to go to the other end of the spectrum, we've got teams focused on the physical infrastructure, for instance, understanding what's below ground. Teams who spend their days in the field, helping us to understand our changing Earth. We've got folks who daily handle million-dollar pieces of equipment, high-tech and high-value tools in the air, in land, on the water, folks that spend their day in the Everglades, and many of us who spend our day in offices, in cubicles, those that teach, and those of us who spend our time perhaps overseeing construction or out in the field working with builders, with developers, contractors. And all part of the WGI team. I really like this shot. It's part of our Texas team in Austin on college game day. Gives you a little peek into part of the team. So with that too, I share all these smiling faces because when we think about culture, we have to remember all of the different types of associates that we're talking about. This is far from a homogeneous population, right? So when you go to do something, you can't think about it from inside of a box. You have to think about how everybody else is going to be thinking and feeling about it. And on top of these differences, we have a rather younger demographic at WGI, which is a great thing. You bring a lot of energy, but we've got folks from all different professions, ages, races, training, backgrounds, and of course, politics. So WGI is focused on innovation and technology as a differentiator and a driver of change. So in addition to our more traditional offerings, we have an advanced geospatial team. We have a smart and connected and new mobility and autonomous vehicle team, a visualization practice, just to name a few. We also make investments in emerging technologies in companies that are helping to change the industry. So with partners like Shadow Ventures and directly, we're also looking to create our unique own internal IP by leveraging the collective creativity of our great team. So we've also created WGI Ventures as a standalone entity within WGI to house all of these efforts. So I don't know about you, but I really see myself in this picture at times, just scratching my head, because if we think about all of the challenges that we have before us and this incredible confluence of events, many of those that we're talking about here at the conference and you're hearing in the other sessions. But things like, industry funding, sustainability, resilience, adaptation, the digitization of our business, the digitization of infrastructure itself, both green and gray infrastructure, which I find particularly intriguing, operating in a traditional industry that's morphing before our eyes, the tools of the trade outside of our people being those software tools, and all of those things that we have at our disposal moving at such a rapid pace. And then, of course, the ever-increasing pressure on our most important and only real asset, which is our teams, our people. So us as leaders, every day we're faced with the challenge of deciding where to spend our time. And every day we make those decisions either, accidentally or with a purpose. But as we ponder how to make it all happen, we naturally tend to focus on those things that are most pressing and those that seem to promise, so much, particularly technology. So I tend to view our business through three lenses: the people lens, the process lens, and the technology lens. And I would ask, each of you to think about where you're spending most of your time. And relative to the first, the people, I don't mean dealing with HR issues and benefits and squabbles and, office space issues and drama. I mean the time we're putting into creative, proactive cultures of innovation, cultures that are driving engagement. So let's talk for a minute about culture. And when I talk about culture, what I'm talking about corporate culture, it's the culture of our organizations. So what does that mean? And what does that mean at a point in time, right? Because when we talk about culture, it's really what it is at a point in time. And we could say it's anything, but it truly is what's represented in your organizations and how they really work, how they think, how they feel about themselves, how they're seen on the outside. So it is collectively how we would describe who we are and how we work. It's also about how things get done, and not how we as a company might say how things get done, but in reality. And there really is a difference, because whenever you come into a new organization, you kind of have to figure your way through and determine how things really get done. And those differences can be significant on how things really happen versus what the company says. It's also about what we spend our time on, right? So, not necessarily what's in our strategic plans, but what we do with that and if we live it out. It's about what we reward and the kind of behaviors we reward. It's about what we tolerate. It's how it aligns with our core values. Do we really live those out? And it's about our vision and whether we're willing to do the hard things to actually move towards, our missions and visions as an organization. And lastly, it's also about trust. So trust is a key component of team dynamics and creating a healthy culture. And this is particularly true when we talk about a culture of innovation. So let's talk about the impact relative to trust on performance. And I find these two statistics particularly interesting. So employees who experience trust are 22 times more likely to take risks that could benefit the company. And employees functioning in an organization of high trust are 8 times more likely to report higher levels of innovation than their competitors. Now, really interesting, because a lot of times we think about innovation, we talk about culture, but this idea of trust is so significant and at the core part of it. And think about the potential impact to your team's long-term success if you believe that innovation is an important part of your success, as I believe we all do. That's why we're here. So why is trust important? What role does it play? And there's a lot of research out there that tells us that self-governing behaviors produce competitive advantage and superior performance. And I'll give you my perspective on the AEC business. And let's face it, we're not known for embracing self-governance. And Nick, you said it at the beginning of this, we don't, as an industry, embrace entrepreneurial freedom. And particularly as organizations get bigger, there's this, and it's not limited to the AEC industry, but we tend to add structure, top-down control, more operational controls. It's the nature of our work. And there's obvious reasons for it, but we must balance those control demands with the innovation benefits. We also, tend to direct work versus allowing it to happen more organically. So take a look at these limiting factors to innovation success. These are from a recent Gartner Tech Innovation study. And just look at the top 4. And the thing that's interesting on these, so employees focus on immediate goals, employees resistant to change. Change management is always a big part of this. Compliance, and then executive resistance. So when we think about moving innovation ahead in an organization, these aren't technology or technology integration issues, right? They're not technology availability issues, not resource issues. These are culture issues. So we can do everything right on the identification, on the obtaining, the onboarding of technology. We can buy the best, hire the best, have great plans. But if the culture is not supportive, we're not going to be successful. So as an extension of that, when we think about cultures linked to performance, culture correlates with performance. And one of the things that's very interesting, every so often we see another study comes out that says culture really matters. Stephen Drucker, I think, was the first to coin the phrase that says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And again, it's because you can do everything else right, but if your organization is not set up for success, it's going to fall down on itself. Culture is inherently difficult to copy. So we're always looking for that competitive advantage. And culture is one of those things that has the ability to really set you apart. So when we think about those things that we're investing in, we can't forget the dynamic with culture, particularly around innovation and what it takes to make that successful. Healthy cultures enable organizations to adapt. So many aspects that we as leaders have to help our teams work through are around change management. And those that have healthy cultures are more ready to do that. Unhealthy cultures lead to underperformance or worse. And this is from our friends at McKinsey. I have dozens of statistics on the impacts of culture on performance, and I thought it was important to bring it back to performance and the direct impact on our ability to be successful. And many times these discussions get lost in talking about employee happiness and coffee bars and ping pong tables. And all of that misses the point. It's about business success. It's about being successful. It's about helping our employees, our associates be successful. But it's about creating cultures that foster and support innovation. And it's relevant from the most senior folks in our teams down to new grads, and interns. And I'm talking about it, from the leadership perspective, but on the other side of the coin too, we need to think about it from the needs of our associates. and what they're thinking about. And they want to be heard. They want to be appreciated for their ideas. They want an opportunity to share. And ideally, they want to be supported in their passions. So what McKinsey found is that 70% of transformations fail. And 70% of those failures are due to culture-related issues. So like we saw on some of the other slides, it's not really a surprise. But then we have to ask ourselves, okay, so how do we take the steps necessary to ensure that culture is helping us succeed versus it being a barrier to success? And top quartile cultures results in 200% higher returns than bottom quartile. Really significant impacts on our ability to be successful. Okay, so as WGI started to really hone in and focus on innovation, particularly our focus internally, we created some guidelines to help expectations and create a framework for leadership. I'm going to share some of those. The first one, the commitment to innovation must be aligned with all of your strategic plans. So one of the things that we found is that if you make innovation an initiative, and I believe this, and I've seen it many times before, but if it's just an initiative, it's something that somebody else is doing. It's not part of the company's DNA. You're never going to be successful. We are talking about, we're talking about digital transformation, but we're talking about the cultural transformation of the company, right? So it has to be part of the DNA and part of who we are. So it must be tied and be woven through your strategic plans. So everybody is thinking about it in the same way. We believe that you've got to commit to being an industry leader and a fast follower where practical. And the reason we say that, and there's that dichotomy there, is that first off, things are moving so quickly that you have to commit to a certain pace. Otherwise, I believe you're going to be left behind. And the second part of this being a fast follower, because there are so many things happening and many firms doing great work, many times it makes sense just to be a fast follower because you can't be out on the leading edge or the bleeding edge for everything. We are really passionate about the fact that you have to invite entrepreneurial freedom and empowerment. This is not easy. In fact, it's probably one of the hardest things that we do because it means changing about how you deploy your capital sometimes, right? So we are organizations that basically sell hours, at least for a significant portion of our portfolio. We're a traditional engineering firm to a degree, so we have to sell hours. So how can you do this, invite entrepreneurial freedom and empowerment in and still achieve your overall KPIs and goals? And there's a balance there. Harness the power of our bright, dedicated, and innovative teams. We have unbelievable resources at our disposal through our people. Our people are absolutely fantastic, and they have great ideas, and they know what's broken, and they know what needs to be fixed. And they've got ideas for the next generation of solving problems, and they're out meeting with our clients on a regular basis. We really have to find ways and be very thoughtful about how we harness what they have to offer. And again, traditionally, we're not set up to do that. So you have to find ways to do that. Don't be afraid to fail if it leads to progress. So this one, when we talk about this, it's interesting. And it's one thing to talk about it with startups because they get it. And they're not afraid to fail and move on and pivot and do what they have to do. It's totally different in our industry, and particularly on the engineering side, because failure usually means something very dire. So in terms of innovating, not being afraid to fail means if we're learning from it, if we're making progress, and it's outside of those critical activities where you can't fail, then it can be a very good thing. But from a cultural perspective, again, you have to get used to that, and we have to talk about what we're trying to achieve, and that in some situations, failure is not only tolerable, but it's invited, because in some cases it's the only way in which you learn. There's this really powerful link between engagement and a culture of innovation. And we're also very much focused on employee engagement, not employee happiness, but employee engagement. And a big part of that too is around entrepreneurship. We want folks, if folks want to be entrepreneurs, if they've got great ideas, we want to embrace that. We want to get them even more charged up about it. We want to set an environment where they can be entrepreneurs and be successful. And organizational support versus control. So this is another one of those cultural dynamics that's really hard, and really hard in bigger organizations. WGI is, approaching 600 folks and 20-something different offices. And there's a certain amount of organizational control that you need to operate. But when it comes to innovation, when it comes to, entrepreneurship, when it comes to allowing the best ideas, the seeds of the best ideas to be planted and for those to be fostered and grown, you can't strangle that. So you have to find ways to change the way that you think about those controls under certain circumstances so that can happen. So you get that, those organic seeds of ideas and innovation, and give them the opportunity to grow and get tall enough to be seen before they get squashed down, by the traditional business. So what I want to do too is just touch on some of the things that we've done, based upon that framework, and it's almost a philosophy that we set out there. Some of the things, some of the ideas that we've moved forward to help us in our push for a culture of innovation and being supportive of that. Really, really critical for us to start with our vision and values. And in fact, it's on my water bottle right there. So WGI has been in business for, and in fact, I think we're coming up on 50 years. And we had values and we had a vision, but several years ago, I joined the firm in 2018. And shortly thereafter too, one of the things we did is myself and some of the leadership went off site and talked about the future, where we were going, and where we were going relative to our commitment to innovation and the importance of that on our future vision for the firm. And we looked at what our current documents were saying about who WGI was, and could we see ourselves in our current vision and our core values? It was yes, but it didn't reflect where we were going. It didn't reflect our aspirations, and it wasn't succinct enough for us to be able to communicate with all of our associates about where we were going and why. So we actually refreshed our vision and core values to represent who we are as a firm and where we're going. So creatively transforming how our world is envisioned, designed, and experienced talks to the next stage, both from a company and I believe as an industry, and where we're going, very forward looking, and our role in that, right? So we're not passengers here, but leaders in that space. And then our three core values, starting with our passion for people and the the sub bullets below it are behaviors that shine a light on those core values and the significance of them. But passion for people, it has to start there. We are, no matter how much technology we bring in, no matter how much automation we bring in, no matter how much RPA we bring in, our business is still about people. And those that we serve are still about people and communities. Be the change you seek. Really important. We are creating an organization of empowerment. We don't want to have to tell, or want to tell everybody how to solve problems. We want to empower our folks to solve problems on their own every day, and to go out and create without being told, without being given permission to go do something that needs to be done. Go do it. Be the change you seek. Be passionate about what you do, and commit to greatness. We like to win. We're committed to being the absolute best we can be, and to compete at the highest levels. We have communicated that we want to be a firm that's different and special. We want to help create that future, not just go along for the ride. So we want everybody to be committed to that future, and that future of greatness. We've also invested in this as well. I talked a little bit about the creation of WGI Ventures. We've also brought in some top talent. We brought in a chief innovation officer, Nick Evans, who's working with myself and the CEO, because we're both very committed to this. But I talked about the need to align our focus on innovation with our strategies, and the innovation charter is something that does that. It reflects that. So this is part of our strategic plan, but it gets into all of the various ways that we look at innovation and measure it, starting with its alignment with our core values, its alignment with our principles. The center of that, the 3 dashboard type items that you see in the top row in the middle, talks about where we are and where we're going, right? So it's a very stark look at, okay, this is where we are today relative to execution. This is where we're going relative to support, what our appetite for change is, and where it has to go. Our focus on, our emerging tech, where is it today? Where is it going? What our innovation activities are, our strategic focus areas, how we govern interdependencies, and how we measure ourselves. And so this is a snapshot of the focus that we've put on that. It's in our strategic plan, and every one of our divisions also has their own snapshot of this, like a canvas. Something else that also became really important, and the reason I included the technology heat map in here is, it seems somewhat in the weeds, but this is representative of making sure that all of our divisions and departments are included in the broader thinking. So going beyond specific technologies and the impact of those technologies on the divisions, it's about how these are going to play an important role in their strategies going forward. So it's tools like this that we're using to start to have those dialogues, and ensuring that we're aligning ourselves as a company around our strategies, and all of the divisions are coming along in that. And again, from a strategic perspective, it's bringing everybody to the table talking about these issues. And again, it's not somebody else who's off doing, innovation. It's everybody, every division and every department in the company. I've talked a few times too about sourcing internal innovation, right? And this notion that we have such a great resource within the organization, but many times we don't stop to ask, we don't stop to listen, we don't go looking for it. And we've put several programs in place to go out and specifically ask for it, right? To go out and look to harvest that, and to release the passions that our folks have. So we actually are in the process of our second annual innovation contest. This is some stats from the first, but a great success. So in the first one, we had over 80 participants, 54 different submissions. And the thing that was really cool about that is those are teams. So 54 different teams, and many of those were multi-divisional teams, and some of them had quite a large number of folks participating. So really interesting to see our folks getting together, cross-divisional, sharing ideas and bringing those together, and them telling us how we can improve new products, new services we can provide to our clients, or how we can make WGI better. And I will give just a few examples of that entrepreneurship that we were talking about, and then I'll open it up for some discussion and chat. But a few things I wanted to highlight. So these are 3 different cases of associates who had a passion for something, right? So they had these ideas, they had thrown themselves into these technologies, and we had a choice. As a company, we had a choice to, tell them, hey, that's great, and do this stuff when you go home, but focus on your day job, right? Stop chasing rainbows. Or find a way to empower them and put this energy to use. So the first in the bottom left of your screen, this is somebody in our geospatial division, and this individual had a passion for leveraging LiDAR data and the power of that information, and how AI and machine learning are changing our ability to understand and intelligently use this information. And a lot of great work happening in this space. This one actually came from an idea of one of our innovation contests. The second up in the top left is an individual in our transportation division, and an individual that has a passion for 3D design and tools that improve our ability to see design options, the impact of design decisions, and how to improve roadway safety by visual what-if scenarios. And the third, this one's particularly interesting, as this associate came on board as part of an acquisition. He actually had a side hustle going on doing visualization work. And when I look back, it's kind of comical now, but foolishly, our initial instinct was to try and control that passion to ensure he focused on his day job. He's a CAD designer. And fortunately, we saved ourselves from a missed opportunity, and encouraged his work for this to actually become his day job, which it eventually did do. The amazing part of this for us is that it led to 3 new practices: one in visualization, one in 3D design and visualization, and one it's a transportation geospatial product. And so it's growing revenue for the business. It's put us in a really unique position with some of our competitors, actually, and some of our competitors have been coming to us, having us do visualization work for them, new capabilities, and frankly, market differentiators for us. So these are examples of the power of taking a risk, encouraging a passion that some of our folks had, supporting good ideas, and then setting them free to experiment. And also having leaders that have the freedom to support them and help them be successful. So those are a few of the things I wanted to highlight. Really interested now to see if there's any questions and to hear your ideas.
Yeah, Greg, well, first of all, great overview of the topic. I feel like this could honestly be a week-long workshop. This stuff, culture in particular, runs so deep. Anyway, I got a lot out of the presentation and appreciate your time. We have one question here so far, so I'll invite everyone else who's listening in to go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A chat. But the first question that I'll read out, so it says, do you mind sharing some of the key differences you've observed between healthy cultures and unhealthy cultures? And I think they're kind of saying specifically when you're there's always a balance of managing people well without micromanaging. So essentially giving them enough autonomy to do creative work and to do their best thinking while also enforcing just high expectations regarding output, right? So do you have any thoughts and like any hacks related to that piece of culture?
Yeah, lots of ideas here. It's actually a good question because it's real easy to go down that road sometimes too. And I'll give you some examples. So we all know, there's people within the organization who, let's say, have been very successful, right? And I'll use the example of somebody in sales, right, who's out there and is one of your best salespeople. But let's just say they don't live out the values that are consistent with your company's core values. So what do you do there? And unhealthy cultures, because that individual had been successful, in this case, sales, will allow those unhealthy behaviors to go on. And then what that does is it starts to erode the belief that those things that you say are important really are. And that just, it leads to very bad behavior. I also always say relative to our core values, and I'll keep coming back to core values, but they should be a framework for decision making. And so when it comes to particularly hard decisions, you have to go back to your core values and say, okay, is this consistent with who we said we want to be and the vision for the firm and our core values? And you should be using those for making decisions. And there's many things that we as firms wind up doing sometimes. It seems like the right thing to do short term, but you wind up creating an unhealthy culture which hurts you in the long run. And Nick, you also said it, in the beginning, which is sometimes we can be so focused just on, certain KPIs that again, we lose sight of the bigger picture. And believe me, in my role, I'm always looking at KPIs, and I'm sure I make, some of our folks crazy about the KPIs. But there's another side to that, is how are we getting to those KPIs and where we want to be as a firm, and how does that relate to our overall, strategies, and where are we spending our time and our investments, and what kind of culture are we creating as a leadership team?
Yeah, I think that's a super helpful response. Another question just came in. How do you get people to start thinking innovation as a key part of their day jobs, as opposed to something that's a distraction when they're busy with their core workload?
Yeah, great question. And actually, so I will tell you something that we struggled with here at WGI just a couple of years ago, because there are those who more readily see the imperative and why we have to do this, and then some others that don't, and it's very easy to understand why, right? There's so much on our plates every day. So there's a few things, and really, myself and the CEO David Wattman are shoulder to shoulder on this, where we have stated this is our future. This is where we're going. This is who we're going to be. So we all have to get on board. And I will tell you, when we started talking this way, people thought it would go away, right? They thought it was going to be another initiative, and Greg got up and did his dog and pony show, and now this is all going to go away. Or when we did strategic planning, maybe, and we kept saying, all right, yeah, but where's the innovation? No, the innovation is not something that somebody else does. It's what the whole division is doing. It's how we think about the future. It really, like anything within an organization, you have to start at the top, and we really, you really need to bring it in at the top. Get your senior leaders on board. In our case, our what we call our SLT, our senior leadership team. Get them on board, and one of the key things here too is getting them to understand the facts, getting them to understand why this is so important. And making it part of how we measure success.
Mm-hmm.
That's critical. It's got to be part of the KPIs of the success of the organization.
Yeah, I think of there's a couple of things with that. Like I think of prioritization being something that is like a really key thing to discuss, and actually emphasizing the priority of, essentially, I think this was your answer, but emphasizing the priority of side hustle entrepreneurship work, and not only emphasizing it and communicating it frequently, but setting aside like actual time for employees, whether it's once a week or once a month or once a quarter, to actually do that work and invest in it, right? Because when the organization invests time that could be otherwise, be spent via billable work, that communicates something about the incentive structure of the long-term innovation culture. So I've seen that. Like there's like stories of Google kind of setting monthly Fridays are essentially your own coursework, and the goal being like, hey, go out and build the next YouTube. But I think that's that came through in your response there. One note I had when you were talking about core values and different types of cultures. It seems like you've experienced quite a lot of different organizational cultures. Do you mind sharing like just some concrete examples of like great cultures that have worked? And knowing that the DNA of one corporation is like highly different than others, and maybe like talking about how both cultures, like no matter how let's assume that one is more of a type B culture, laid back, creative, inspiring, high social impact, etc. The other one's like high output, profitability, capitalistic. Both can be successful. It's kind of the Uber Lyft comparison, if you will. But can you describe like some of the different cultures that you've personally experienced and like how they achieved success via different like cultural values?
Yeah, really good question, and you're absolutely right too. So I spent 10 years with a firm called Sauter, and we did super high complex, high risk type projects, everything from nuclear power plants to the cleanup of the nuclear weapons complex and unexploded ordnance and stuff like that. Things you just have to get right every time. And it was very much that was a culture of excellence in getting it right the first time. I spent 15 years at AECOM, and in a culture of growth, right? We went from, when I started, it was 4,000, then quickly 10,000. When I left, it was close to 100,000 people, which was very different than when I went and created Smart City Works or the consulting business, where it was working directly with startups that were all about, the product and getting to MVP and working, dynamically and very close. And the key thing in any of the cultures, first off, is setting a culture that's going to help you achieve your strategies, and then attracting. So you have to be able to articulate the culture that you want to see at your firm, and then attracting people where that resonates with them, right? So you gave some examples, and some of our competitors would, we would put them in a different box, right? Where you said maximum output and making as much money as possible, and nothing wrong with that, right? So, but you want to attract people where that's what they want to do, right? And for us, and the culture that we're creating is we are going to be successful, and we want all of our people to be successful and be rewarded for their hard work as well, and be successful financially. But it goes beyond that, right? We are looking to create a special place in the market. We want people to be able to focus on their passions, not just making money. And we find room within our organization to give people the freedom to do that. And that's why, WGI is not the right place for everybody, right? And those other firms are not the right place for everybody. AECOM, great organization, but not the right place for everybody. Because for you to achieve what you want to achieve, but also to be fired up about going to work every day, right? You have to be given the opportunity to live out your passions and to share your ideas, and that somebody's actually going to listen to those ideas and wants to do something with them. And that's what we're focused on here and what we're trying to create.
Great. We have a question from Brad. How prescriptive are the instructions for your internal innovation contests? Is there a minimum deliverable for submission?
Yeah, so there are some criteria that we set out for the contest. I wouldn't say overly prescriptive. It goes to, what the idea is, why it's special, what the impact is going to be, both either internally for the company or externally in the industry. And we leave it wide open. So it could be something very small. We're also a big believer in just taking the grit out of the system. So if somebody has an idea for doing something simple within the organization, but it makes everybody's life easier. Sometimes people get, lost on the moonshots. And do we love to hear about the moonshots? Yes. But if you think about, something that we do inefficiently and somebody can fix that, and then that one inefficiency, might be something we do 10 times a day, and then it's 600 people doing that 10 times a day, 1,000 days a year, well, that really starts to add up. So there could be big impacts on actually little changes in taking the grit out of the system. And so what we do is we take in all the ideas, we bring a series of teams together from our innovation council, and those teams go through and they identify what they think are the best ideas. And then we have a really fun pitch day. In fact, we've got a pitch day coming up this Friday, and they will pitch to the senior leadership team. And from those, we identify the best of the best, and there's rewards and cash rewards, and an opportunity for us as well to take those ideas and invest in them and grow them.
Fantastic. Greg, one last question for you. What kind of KPIs, so I think they're looking for specifics, help you guys internally at WGI incentivize innovation?
Yep. Good question. So, and I'll talk about it in a couple different ways. The first is specifically on innovation. We're looking at the impact that innovation is having and on our base KPIs, right? So when we talk about innovation, it's not only about, like I said, those moonshots, but how is our innovation actually changing our win rate, right? How is it changing our ability to create more of a gap in our competitive advantage? So we look at it in our regular, many of our regular KPIs. We also look at the innovation efforts themselves. So how many ideas are we seeing come through the system? How far have those ideas gotten? What have been the results of it? I talked about a few of those that actually we saw turn into specific practices, revenue generating practices. So are we getting traction? Are they making the difference to the firm, either from a revenue or growth, a profit, perhaps a market sector segment? And then how is it also making a difference? Another KPI we look at is around engagement. So I talked about that close tie between a culture of innovation and an engaged workforce. So we also look at specific measurements of engagement, both broad engagement statistics and then engagement statistics relative to innovation in the firm. So there's a series of things we look at to measure that.
Awesome, Greg. From my ability to read a Q&A in a chat, I think that is about it. Do you have any parting thoughts for the group?
No, I thank everybody for participating again. It's an area I'm passionate around, that I've got a lot of passion around. So I appreciate, Nick, your energy today too, because I know you appreciate it, and others for joining today. And I look forward to further collaborations.
Great. We'll host you back for a 2-week workshop coming in October. So hope you have your calendar cleared off.
Right on. Sounds good.
All right. Well, for those who are looking to stay consistent on the managed track, next up we have the roadmap to your digital twin strategy, reaching your full potential session. Digital twins are now a critical component to the building life cycle. So from design to construction and operations, digital twins are playing an increasingly important role in achieving goals at each stage of the life cycle of construction. So the question that we're asking in this session is, what should owners, GCs, and trade contractors think about when establishing the digital twin strategy? That will be, again, on the managed track. So you can go into the main reception or go into the sessions tab to find that session. We will be departing Greg here now. Greg, thanks again, and see everyone soon.